Here's the head. I got it back from the machine shop where I had it rebuilt. Looks like they did a really nice job. And I just wiped it down with some degreaser to make sure there's no oil on the surface there. Got my new head gasket and my bolts. And there's a lot of debate about whether you should oil the threads on the head bolts or not. But if you go to the Felpro gasket site, they recommend putting a light amount of oil on the thread and also under the head of the bolt. Now these bolts have washers, so I put a drop of oil right in here and then, rub that washer around there. And before I put the bolts in, I'll just take a rag and wipe them, because you don't want a big glob of oil or excess oil piling up on top of the head when you're screwing it in. Most people don't put any glue or sealant on the gasket. You don't have to. They're perfectly fine just putting them on dry. But I always like to use a little of this copper spray gasket. It's a high temperature sealant and made specifically for exhaust manifolds, heads, and turbocharger flanges. It just gives you a little insurance. Will fill in any little imperfections in the head or in the block. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take that gasket outside there so I don't make a mess in here and put a light coat on both sides of it. Here it is. After you spray it, you're supposed to wait a few minutes and let the solvents evaporate off of it. So I think it's been long enough. I'm ready to put it on here. And make sure you got your little locating dowels or rings in there. So I'm just going to try and handle it from the outside here. Push it down on there, down there. Okay, that's good. What I'm going to do now is just put 2 bolts in and just run them down snug, not tighten them or anything. What I want to do is put the camshaft in there and get my timing chain on, and then I can get my front cover on there because I've got bolts that go up under here, and then when I torque the head down, that'll all sandwich it together pretty good. A little assembly lube inside these journals. Put some lube on the camshaft. This is a Schneider Racing Cams Street Performance camshaft. It's a part number 70032. It's nothing too radical, but just increase the performance a little bit. Especially with the triple Weber carburetors and the headers that I've got, it'll be a nice combination. This little cam retainer plate's got a little notch right on the top here, so that needs to go up. Okay, I've got the sprocket, I've got a brand new chain, and if you look at this chain, you see it's got a couple of different colored links on it. In this case, they're dark, So those dark links have to align with the points on the sprocket here, little indentation on the sprocket down there. And then same thing up here. This has got 3 different positions you can put it in. Like if you have a stretched timing chain, you can go to number 2 position and it'll rotate the cam just slightly to compensate for it. This is a brand new chain, so hopefully we'll be okay. Now when you mill the top of the head, or the bottom of the head, or the top of the block, and it drops the head down lower, puts the center distance between the crankshaft and the camshaft closer together. Sometimes that will necessitate going to a number 2 or a number 3 hole. So I just need to get these in the right position here. Okay, I'm on number 1 there. Get this repositioned, number 1 down there. And then rotate the camshaft a little bit so I can lock it in. There we go. Good there, I'm good there. And now I'm going to, rotate this camshaft in this direction to make this side of the chain tight, because when the engine runs, the crankshaft drives this direction, so it's a straight pull on the camshaft, and then the chain on this side, you know, it's got the tensioner that pushes on the chain down here. So what I'm looking for now is, with this chain kind of snug here and the camshaft rolled back as far as it'll go that way, I'm still on number 1 top dead center right here. This hole should be right in line with a mark that's on that little mark on that camshaft retainer. There's my chain. You can see the little dimple in the gear right there. So that's got to be aligned there. Same thing up here. There's a dimple right there. And if you look in here, you can see that little dash right on the back of the, or the front of the cam retaining plate. And the hole is kind of right in line with it. Okay, I've got a little oil on this thing. This is the new chain tensioner. Okay, everything looks good there with the timing chain. Time to put this timing cover on there. I've got a new seal in here. I've got my gaskets on here. I put a little bit of gasket cement on both sides. If I can get this popped up on there. Okay, that's good. Now I'll put a couple of screws in here to hold it, and then I can torque all these head bolts down, and I'll double check my alignment on this sprocket to the little knots on the camshaft retaining plate. If all looks good, then I'll be ready to go. Okay, now it's time to torque all these head bolts down, and I'm going to start in the middle, do these, keep getting progressively further out, and I'm going to do it in 3 stages. They end up, final torque is 60 foot-pounds. I'm going to start at 30, then do 40, and then take it to 60. Actually, I think I'm going to take them to 20 first, all of them. For the final torque, I'm going to use this clicker torque wrench. That way I don't have to be trying to see over it. One more thing I've got to torque is this bolt right here. I hadn't torqued it yet because I wanted to get the head bolt torqued down. I didn't want to be moving the crankshaft or take a chance of rotating anything. So now that everything's back together, this line doesn't look like it changed really at all. So my timing is perfect. This cam bolt gets torqued to 100 foot-pounds. You didn't see it probably, but I put the oil slinger on that crankshaft before I put the timing cover on. So now I'm going to slip this on here. And then this will get torqued down about 100 foot-pounds also. Now I can start installing my rocker arms and adjusting the valves. I'm going to put a little bit of Prussian blue on these rocker arm pads because I have to measure the white pattern and make sure that as the camshaft rotates, the lobe rotates over this rocker arm pad, that it's kind of centered in the pad. And what I don't want is it completely off one end or the other. As long as it's on the pad somewhere, closer to the center the better, then I'm okay. I've got to compress the spring ever so slightly to get that on there. Let's see if I can come over this way and do it easier. Okay, and these get adjusted 10 thousandths on the exhaust, 8 thousandths on the intake. So this is an exhaust. Here's the exhaust port right above it. This next one's an intake right above the intake port. So I'll just stick this in here. Okay, I just got both valves adjusted on this number 1 cylinder, and I've got some Prussian blue on the white pads on the rocker arms. So now I'm going to rotate it through once and then take a look at the wear pattern, and hopefully it'll be okay. This is the second time I'm going through this. The first lash pads I had in there were too thick. So hopefully these will be just right because these are the only 2 sizes I've got. Now I'll take a look. That looks good. Okay, I think I'm gonna get lucky. Let me see if I can show you. You can see the little blue line across the bottom of the lash pad. That tells me that the entire lobe of the camshaft is not coming off the edge there. So that's what we want to see on both sides. Okay, you can see kind of where it is. So I think I'm okay. So now I'll just go through here one by one, do the same thing, and hopefully they'll all turn out as well as these 2 did. Well, I almost got lucky. I have one that is unacceptable and a couple more that are marginal. Now these lash pads I've got in here right now are 170 thousandths thick. So I ordered a couple of 180s, a couple of 190s, and a couple of 195s. So hopefully I'll be able to get the one that's unacceptable in the range, and then improve a couple of those that are marginal. So what I'm going to do now, I can't go any further with this right now. I can go ahead and start putting some of the accessories on here, the water pump, the distributor in here, the motor mounts. I got to flip it over, put the oil pan on, get the rest of this timing cover bolted down. So there's things I can do, so I'm going to be going ahead and working on that now. I'm a firm believer in using gasket glue. I don't like leaks, so I'm not afraid to glue everything down, both sides. Okay, I'm getting ready to put the oil pump in now, and I'm going to pour a little tiny bit of oil right in here, and then I'm going to pour some oil into the pump itself. Okay, and that'll kind of prime it. Okay, that'll be good. I'm going to rotate this shaft until I get that little punch mark on the gear right there in line with this oil hole right there. That looks pretty good. Put a little lube on here, up here. I put some around the gear here too. Now I'll see if I can stick it up in there. Okay. And now, let me just stick a bolt in here to hold it temporarily. Now I've got to look at the angle that's between this flat on the distributor gear and these two bolt holes here. And it's supposed to be 5 degrees, but that looks to be more than 5 degrees, so I'm probably 1 tooth off. Okay, that looks to be more like 5 degrees. I'm going to torque these to the proper spec so they'll all be even. Book calls for 8 to 11 foot-pounds. And as you look down here, you see this little tang is not in the center of the shaft, and you want the little small circle or the tang to be towards the front of the engine. Okay, I just got my new lash pads, got them installed, have adjusted all the valves, put some Prussian blue on the pads on the rocker arms, rotated a couple of times. Everything looks good now. The white pattern from the lobe onto the pad on the rocker arm is centered within the pad, so I'm ready to continue on now. These cam towers were designed to have this little spray bar on here. And what happens is oil gets fed up through the cam towers, out this hole, and into this spray bar, and it comes down here, and you see there's little holes all along here, and it sprays oil out on these lobes, and that's how they get oil. But this new camshaft I've got, now this is for a camshaft that's not drilled, but this new camshaft I've got is got a hole drilled down through the center of it. And so I need to block these off because oil will go through these journals, come down the hole through the center of the camshaft, and come out these little holes right here on the back of each one of the lobes. So I don't need this spray bar anymore. So what I've got for that is these little block off plates, and a little screw will go right here, and they'll just go in there like this. And that'll block those holes. And I'm going to put a little Loctite on these bolts because I don't want them coming loose, and these little tabs, little block off plates going like that, and then that oil is going to be coming out of here instead of down through the center of the camshaft. And once the valves are all adjusted, we can put these little springs back on. The only reason I didn't put the valve cover on before installing the engine is because I didn't want to scratch it up. And it's running real good. Now that's not the first time I fired it up. I've had it running and warmed it up and set the timing, adjusted the carburetors. I've taken it for a drive. Just need to get it broke in now, but it seems like it's going to be a real good engine for this car.